I always believed that life had a way of overlooking certain people, and I was one of them. My name is Emily Carter, and for as long as I can remember, I was the quiet one in the room, the girl no one noticed. I lived in Maplewood, a small town in Oregon where everybody knew each other, and somehow, that made it even worse. Being invisible in a small town was like shouting in an empty room. Nobody ever heard you, even though you were right there. I worked at a local bookstore called the Reading Nook, tucked between a bakery and a flower shop on the main street. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. The smell of old books, the sound of the rain tapping on the window, the soft conversations between readers, that was my world. Still, I couldn't help feeling like I was missing something. My coworkers, Lily and Megan, were outgoing, cheerful, and always seemed to be part of everything exciting that happened in town, from coffee shop open mics to charity events. I often tagged along but rarely spoke. People would greet me politely, but no one ever remembered me. I didn't blame them. Some people just fade into the background. Or at least, that's what I thought, until Ethan Walker walked into my life. Chapter 1. The Stranger in the Rain. It was a Wednesday afternoon, gray, wet, and slow. The kind of day where customers stayed home with blankets and hot tea. I was restocking a shelf when the bell above the door rang. He stepped in, shaking rain from his jacket. He looked like he belonged in a movie, tall, calm, with that quiet confidence people either have or don't. His brown hair was damp, and his eyes carried that rare kind of gentleness that could silence a storm. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey, do you have anything by Jack London?" His voice was soft but sure. I nodded, pointing to the shelf near the back. "Second row, left side," I said. He thanked me and disappeared between the aisles. I went back to organizing, pretending not to notice that my heart was suddenly beating faster. A few minutes later, he came back to the counter holding a copy of The Call of the Wild. "This one's a classic," I said quietly, scanning the barcode. "Yeah," he smiled. "I used to read it with my dad. Thought I'd revisit it." There was a pause, the kind that feels like it could last forever if no one interrupts. Then he said, "I'm Ethan, by the way." "Emily," I replied, and for the first time in years, someone looked at me like they actually saw me. Chapter 2. The Small Moments. Ethan started visiting the bookstore often. Sometimes he'd buy books, sometimes he'd just browse. Other times, he'd sit in the little reading corner near the window and read quietly while I worked. We talked more as the weeks passed. He told me he had recently moved to Maplewood from Seattle after leaving his corporate job. He wanted a slower, simpler life, one where he could breathe again. Something about that felt familiar. I knew what it meant to crave peace. He noticed the little things, how I tucked my hair behind my ear when I read, how I smiled when customers thanked me. He remembered my favorite book, Little Women, and even brought me a vintage edition he found at a flea market. No one had ever done something like that for me before. It wasn't romantic, at least, not in the beginning. It was friendship, pure and real. For once, I wasn't invisible. Chapter 3. The Town Fair. By early summer, Maplewood was alive again. The town fair came with bright lights, laughter, and the smell of popcorn everywhere. Lily and Megan convinced me to come, and to my surprise, Ethan showed up too. He waved when he saw me, and something in that wave made my chest tighten. We walked through the fair together, riding the Ferris wheel, playing ring toss, and laughing more than I thought I could. I wasn't used to being the center of attention, but around him, it felt natural. When the fireworks started, he looked at me instead of the sky. "It's strange," he said, "how sometimes the quietest people have the loudest hearts." I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. For the first time, I realized how much it meant to be seen, not for what you do, but simply for who you are. Chapter 4. The Distance. But life, as always, has its storms. Ethan told me he had to go back to Seattle for a few months to help his mother recover from surgery. I tried to act like it didn't matter, like I'd be fine. But when he left, the bookstore felt empty again. The days passed slowly. I still worked, still smiled at customers, but I felt the silence creep in again. One day, I found a small note tucked inside Little Women. Greater than, Emily. Sometimes, people like us think we're invisible because we look for reflections in the wrong places. But trust me, you shine brighter than you think. I'll see you soon, Ethan. I cried that night, not because I was sad, but because someone finally understood me. Chapter 5. The moment that changed everything. Months passed. Autumn arrived, painting the streets in gold and orange. I had stopped waiting for Ethan, even though I thought of him often. Then, one rainy afternoon, just like the day we met, the bell above the bookstore door rang. I turned around. It was him. He smiled, holding a cup of coffee in each hand. I didn't know if you still liked caramel lattes, he said. I froze for a moment before whispering, you remembered. Of course I did, he said softly. How could I forget the only person who ever made this town feel like home? I couldn't find words. All I could do was smile through the tears that were already falling. He handed me the cup, and for a second, everything around us disappeared, the rain, the shelves, the years of loneliness. That moment, that small, simple moment, changed everything. Chapter 6. Finding Light. Ethan didn't leave again. He started a small coffee shop nearby and called it, Second Chapter. He said it was named after me, after the idea that everyone deserves a second chance to be seen, to be loved, to begin again. We never made grand declarations or promises. We just kept showing up for each other, day after day, moment after moment. And slowly, the girl who once thought she was invisible began to believe that she wasn't. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person, one unexpected moment, to remind you that you were never truly unseen. Epilogue. It's been 3 years now. The bookstore is still running, and Ethan's cafe is always filled with laughter and warmth. Every time it rains, I think of that first day, the sound of the bell, the damp air, and the stranger who changed everything. I used to think invisibility was my curse. Now I know, it was just waiting for the right person to see through it.